So we can start with the questions. Who is going to be the brave first one to ask? I was thinking that we might kind of follow up on Marek's question from the morning.
I can just repeat my question. Okay, so we covered Germany, so now if I could ask what are the current trends in research in LIS in the States and in the UK? What are some of the projects you are working on?
I hope I can give a good overview of what's going on in my school because it's very interdisciplinary and very broad. So my own research interests really are sociological in nature, and I'm interested in changes in organizations and how organizations have changed and developed, especially organizations that are intensively IT. So it's a never-ending source of interest to me to look at these institutions and the people in them and how they have changed. But that's just what I do. There's another core of people in our school that do a lot of information retrieval work. People like Diane Kelly, a group of young faculty that are very interested in information retrieval in all of its aspects. We have another group of faculty that are very interested in big data that came over from University of San Diego, University of California at San Diego, and they work on big data and how you work with large data sets and that whole area. There's another group of faculty that are very interested in archives and digital archives. And one of my young colleagues, Cal Lee, just got a good grant on it's cybersecurity and that sort of thing. So, you know, how do you keep your records safe? Another large group of people working on health informatics. This program on health informatics for the university is located in my school. Not this off again. So I think that's enough for me now that I've killed the microphone. But
I'd like to say something about culture. I think library information science research spans a very broad area. Thank you. So my own personal interest depends on the colleagues that I'm working with. So I work with David Gordon, and I mentioned this briefly this morning, on defining what is information. We're very interested in looking at the relationship between communication theory, Shannon's equation, and what that means today, information being a fundamental part of the universe. I'm going to come on to something more lab related in a minute, but the reason is that when I studied information science in the day, Shannon's equation and communication, information theory was very big in the curriculum. And I always had this, you know, I did as I was told. I learned the equation and stood it for the exam. And throughout my career, I then thought, what does this have to do with anything at all, really? And so then when I started to work with library information science more closely, I decided I was going to answer that question. So we've been working on looking at the connection between information and meaning and entropy and the underlying laws of the universe and complexity and chaos. So if you can look up our papers on the website. For my research with most PhD students, we are working in a couple of areas which are more usual. I think in user behaviour. So a couple of PhD students working on image retrieval and the way that lawyers are using mobile devices to access information resources. And then particularly we're looking at user behaviour in more unusual areas. So I mentioned two this morning. The first is fandom, cult fandom. Do you have cult fandom, media fandom here? People who dress up as their favourite characters in sci-fi series, or people who write stories because they didn't like the ending. You don't like how Star Wars finished? Write another show, yeah? So this is a very, very rich culture. And this idea of fantasy is very related to virtual reality and immersive media. So we're looking at how people engaged in fandom are using information, and it's quite interesting because it's much more cyclical and there's much more sharing and reuse and development. Some of it is obviously not quite legal, but we're not the police, we're just looking at what they do. We're not sort of saying it's right or not. For copyright reasons, you know, so they steal copyright material and change it. So we're looking at that sort of information behaviour, and we're also looking at information behaviour of cool hunters, understanding again how people it used to be marketing intelligence, I think, looking at what's the next big thing, are we all going to wear black again? And cool hunters, thank you. Cool hunters have a very, very sort of almost sixth sense of what's going to come next. And some people have it, and some of us sadly do not. But anyway, again, this idea of concepts and immersive experiences, what makes people think something's cool, what makes them buy. It's about selling, really. So we're looking at information behaviour in those areas. And then just to show that there's no hard feelings, I have one student who's looking at traditional card catalogues as a document to see, obviously digital catalogues don't have the same imprint on them, the human imprint that card catalogues do. And if you look through old card catalogues, some of the beautiful museums and libraries in London, you can see the history of those people who changed the classification, who made their own little notes, sometimes writing quite rude things about what's happening in the past. So she's studying the catalogue as a document. Nowadays, you know, somebody could just come and edit your digital entry, it's not the same. And then my final PhD student, he is looking at the future of museum libraries, and he's looking at national museum libraries, and he's comparing the situation in places like London, where we have museum libraries which were set up at the turn of the century, turn of the last century, compared to the situation in the Arab states and Qatar in particular, where there's a lot of money to set up new libraries, but in perhaps very different socio-cultural situation. I think that's probably
Another question. Now you have to shout to be really close to the
Could I add just one thing?
Okay.
I think one of the trends I've seen in research is when I came into the field, we were doing single-person research. We were each working on our own research project. And in the last, 20 years, it's just everybody is working in groups. So as you say, it's what group I'm working with now that depends on what I'm doing. Because I think our projects have become too big for one person, and also the funding is easier when you get a group of people.
Funding agencies like groups.
They're funding agencies like groups. Who follows the money? None of us.
Okay.
Do the students in our research projects, or you have only academic research?
At Chapel Hill? Well, I'll just start off. Our students are, many of them are involved in research projects. All of our doctoral students are. And they're all funded with some sort of funded research grant we get, and so they work on the research projects. But many of our master's degree students are also working on faculty and research. And all of our master's students have to do their own research project in their master's thesis.
Yeah, same for us. When we have research projects, we always put in money for students, meaning either bachelor or master's students, and by and large, money for doctoral students as well. So one of the grants I have right now is called so-called National Posting. It's a long-term archiving grant, and I have one doctoral student and one master's student in that. Could have had a BA student too. And this is very typical. I don't think we have any funding don't have students embedded in. But part of the point is that our students something to live on.
What's the situation in practice?
Yes, it's very similar to this schema, because all our PhD students are obliged to be part of the research projects. So more or less they're involved. And when we have a larger research project, we also plan the funding for doctoral students with a vision for 2 or 3 years ahead, because sometimes we don't know who they will be, but we still involve doctoral students in projects. Yes. And it's very good for them because, for example, one of our students now, she's involved in institutional repositories research, and she's also connected with practice with some libraries. She works there. And also she worked on our research on this project with doctoral students, and it was good because she was closer to doctoral students, and they could talk to them during these interviews. Yes, definitely we have this schema for
Okay.
It's slightly different. We master's students usually pay their own fees, or they're paid by their employer to do part-time. And often their projects are related to something that they're doing in their organisation or not. But our research isn't funded, we're just paid by the university. So I have funding for one of my PhD students, has funding in fan fiction, much to the annoyance of the computer scientists. How did you get funding for an art student? Lots of scientists, well there you go. Yeah, I think it's just, it was a very good idea, but it's a bit unusual.
Perhaps I should add, our education is free. So when I say feeding the students, it really is money for them to live on, not money for them to pay us back.
In Brno, we heard about the application seminars.
So we have research seminar and we work with students together. Every teacher has his own research project, and we work with master students. And budget students as well can be involved if they are interested.
We have something.
We tried this year to do the same as in Brno, so we have a new subject which is intended for students, not only for master students, but for bachelor students too. And it has many tutors or teachers, and every teacher or tutor has its own room and can make research. So this is a new thing this year. And yes, within the doctoral studies, it's quite usual that the students apply for funding, and they make research in their
May I ask? Maybe I don't understand the British system, but research is then financed only by the private sector, by companies, and sometimes they might cooperate with universities. Do I get it right?
There are some funding bodies which will fund doctoral research. It's usually in STEM subjects, so science, technology, engineering and maths. There is one funding body for the arts, which we were successful to get funding from. It's just there are very many arts programs and not so much funding. So for us, most of our PhD students pay for themselves. They work and they research part-time. Yeah.
We have another question.
I'm gonna ask a question. My name is Vera Pilecka. I'm from the Institute of Librarianship and Information Studies here at Charles University. And if I'm right, nobody talked about if in any of your programs, if it's compulsory to have some subjects in foreign language, probably in English, or if it's compulsory to go abroad, to study abroad, or do you think it's a good idea or not?
It's a very good idea.
Maybe who's going to pay for that? I don't know.
Yeah, we don't have any stipulation that foreign languages are necessary, nor do we insist on foreign experience. Although if a student can afford that, then to do that for a dissertation would be good. But it's a question of who will pay for that.
Most of our education is in German, but we do require students to have at least a reading proficiency in English, and that in particular for our research-oriented master's program, that we require it, so we push it a little bit more for that. We require it for all the programs. We have a very active exchange with Copenhagen, and that's not in Danish. It runs largely in English. In the summer semester, that is our semester from April until July, we have long encouraged students also to know French. That's been less successful. We don't require it, and frankly, French is not being learned as much in German gymnasium, high school equivalent, as it was at one time. So far, no requirement to learn Czech.
Well, I'll tell you a sad joke. What do you call somebody who speaks 2 languages? Bilingual, right? They speak 3 languages. Maybe trilingual or Czech. They speak 1 language. You call them an American. So I'm afraid that we have no requirements for foreign languages. We used to require students to have a reading proficiency in another language. But that left about 15 years ago. But we do encourage study abroad because we truly think the world is becoming one, and our students need to get out there, even though most of them are going to have to communicate in English. So we have a lot of active exchange programs, including one with Charles, including one with the Royal School. Our students go many places. But our problem is that our master's students are supporting themselves, and school is not free. And most of them are working part-time jobs, they've got graduate assistantships, and they can't afford it. We're finding that small group of undergraduates actually are taking more advantage of this, because usually their parents are still supporting them and sending them to school, and they're not having to support it themselves. But we would dearly love to have more students study abroad and to have the wonderful opportunity to have students from abroad come to us, because we learn so much from them.
I just would add that we have some courses which are compulsory. Maybe it's similar to Prague. We have courses in English language, and they can choose German and French, and they are required. But in fact, in PhD studies, they don't have courses. But if they feel that they need English, they can go somewhere and they have a course. But we require them to read English texts. Community.
I think I can say we have no faculty who are monolingual. All have some other language they speak.
Good evening. My name is Zavěrečná. I'm a graduate student at LIS. I would like to ask you, what do you think? Is it necessary or important today, nowadays, to implement to modern LIS curricula marketing? And if it's necessary, what do you think? What's the concept? What's the focus on? Thank you.
Am I supposed to answer that first? No, I don't think it's necessary, personally. We don't offer any marketing courses. On the other hand, we need to understand what marketing is. Library ought to do more marketing. We certainly indirectly talk about marketing when we talk about how we are doing research, how people understand information systems, information resources, information itself. So one of the techniques that is used in marketing, one of the ethnographic techniques, we use regularly. One of the psychological techniques, establishing persona, we use regularly. But we don't use it under a marketing umbrella, we use it under a research umbrella.
We do have a course in marketing, and many students take it, and I think they find it helpful. In the U.S., there is a big push now, especially in libraries, for something called advocacy. And advocacy is more than marketing, but it's standing up and speaking up for what libraries are able to do for the people. And I think that who have these concepts of marketing, they find it easier sometimes to be advocates for their institutions.
I think it can be useful to have marketing of libraries. We used to have the information institution. We used to have this course, but now it's not taught in that form that was usual. But marketing and management come somehow together. So if we have management of libraries, library institutions, marketing can be part of that. The situation.
We don't teach generic marketing or generic management. We teach management of information. But with regard to marketing, the then director of the British Library was very brutal to me and said, Lynn, if I want to hire somebody in marketing for my library, I will hire somebody from Harvard, and not a librarian who's done an elective. However, many people in library information science work as self-starters or one-man bands, and so some level of promotional activity is going to be essential. So our approach is more personal communication skills. So we're very big on social media and social skills, communicating, a small version of advocacy, I would think. This comes along with the idea of the quiet librarian who likes to serve and likes to sit at the back and read. And certainly our library students are more likely to be some club till 4 a.m. But hopefully they'll make it till lectures the next day. So I think personal promotion is important. Yeah.
I prefer to speak about digital marketing.
Yeah.
And digital marketing influences information driven design of information driven, and it is still evolving towards science. There is a lot of measurement tools, new techniques, and I'm afraid we will be forced to care about digital marketing. I don't like it, but I think it will be necessary.
For me, personal, it's not necessary to teach generic marketing, but it's very necessary to teach design of information services, and within this subject, marketing techniques of information services. So, not marketing as self, but marketing techniques. Yes.
We have another question.
Yeah, I'm Mr. Dobrovan from New Media Studies here at Charles University, and I would like to ask, we were talking about how LIS is interdisciplinary, and I would like to ask, do your departments often somehow cooperate with different departments on the same school or with different schools with different, I don't know, specializations?
Certainly, we collaborate in a variety of ways. We have people who teach in our program from other units within the university, particularly computer science, but not exclusively that. In research terms, we have a fairly close relationship to ethnography, and we have students, doctoral level students mostly, where we share some resources there, share some people there. We also have people from the law school, come over and do teaching for us, because there are some legal issues that we need people who actually have the training to be able to give completely accurate information. We have often talked about making it a little bit broader, certainly within our faculty, within the group of humanities schools that we have. There are some cross-divisional courses, cross-cultural courses in ethics that we have discussed, and also in I'm trying to think what the English word is. It's business jobs and sheet.
History of science.
History of science. Thank you. Need help from the checks. We haven't actually implemented those, and there are some barriers to doing that in terms of the requirements for what people teach. But the goal is certainly there. We do some.
We have a lot of cooperative ventures on campus, and I think that's so important for our schools because for so long we were very isolated and we taught just what we taught, and we thought we were fine, and we obviously were not fine. We had to reach out. And the lovely thing is now, I think with what we have in our schools, people are reaching out to us. We have more opportunities for cooperation than we really can handle. So we also cooperate with computer science. We have a lot of, we actually have joint master's degrees with about 7 or 8 units. So we have a joint master's in information and library science and law, one in just art, just across the university, which brings students in. We also have a lot of cooperation with the School of Journalism and Mass Communication, which would fit into your area of interest because not so much the journalism, but this new interest in new media and mass communication. There's a lot of interest. And I guess the other area is health, the health informatics area, because we have a very strong medical school, pharmacy school, all those health schools at our university. And there's a core of people from those schools and my school that need, and we planned this curriculum in health informatics, which works. So that much joint research and a lot of cooperation from one side of the campus to the other.
So as for me, we cooperate, of course, I already told you, with computer science people in our research projects, recently with Department of Sociology and Psychology, because of these user studies, so we have some connections and even hopefully some common projects. And we also have a cooperation with, as for the teaching, with the department, we call it marketing, or I can't remember the exact name, but it's like media studies and marketing. So we have some connection even with the Department of Journalism. There are nice overlap between areas with new media which we are interested in. And of course, we try to be open to some other cooperations.
So I think with regard to interdisciplinarity, perhaps the most obvious area is subject specialisms. And I mentioned earlier that information science usually takes a subject focus. So we've already heard of healthcare. So there's cooperation with healthcare specialists, either as practitioners or as library workers, to look at how use of information is changing. So we'll be in two areas really: the actual resources, for example, legal resources, healthcare resources, media resources, business resources is very popular. And we take quite a traditional view that an information specialist would have some sort of subject background and subject specialism. But within that, you then apply the whole of the communication chain. So you need to understand, who creates healthcare information, how is it disseminated, how is it managed, how is it stored and indexed, and how is it used and back again. So